afternoon, Dr. Tushar.
Yeah, Tushar, good afternoon.
Ma'am, please start.
From Nagpur.
Hello. Ma'am, meeting is live now. Kindly start.
Yeah.
To mute वर आहेस जयश्री.
Can you?
Good afternoon, everybody. Palghar Academy of Pediatrics welcome you all to this monthly CME. Today we have got bonanza of knowledgeable feast in our mixed bag thing, and we are celebrating the celiac days awareness month today. Celiac disease is a chronic digestive and immune disorder that damages the small intestine and is triggered by eating food containing gluten. It can cause long-lasting digestive problems and keep your body from getting all the nutrients it needs. The only treatment is the gluten-free diet, and avoidance is the only treatment. We are like getting many people now in India also having celiac disease and diagnosed more often recently. We have got our expert, Dr. Lalit Verma, pediatric gastroenterologist, hepatologist, and liver transplant specialist, as a speaker in our monthly CME, and we are happy to welcome you, sir. He is an American board certified gastroenterologist. Nice to see you, Dr. Lalit Verma, sir. We welcome you all and we are eager to learn from you.
Thank you very much. That was wonderful, kind of, a layout for the celiac disease and celiac month. I think I've logged in from my phone. So if there is any disturbance, then I'll switch it off. Okay. So let me just share my screen. So we have had in the past spoken about celiac disease, couple of cases. So I'm going to this time just talk more about what's kind of new in this. So just to begin with, celiac disease is a genetic autoimmune disease, as you clearly mentioned. It is because of the ingestion of gluten, which is actually a protein which leads to serious damage. Now, you can find this protein, which is called gluten, in wheat, barley, rye, and some forms of oat and triticale. So, celiac disease, actually, the numbers are pretty high. So, if you compare West from our side, in America, the present current rate of prevalence is 1 in 100. So, that's actually a huge number. It's a huge number. Uh, Now, having spoken about that, when you talk about US, then there are 2 million Americans who are undiagnosed or at a larger risk of cancer because, 2, 3 decades later, if undiagnosed and gluten is not stopped at the right time, then it can lead to, lymphomas, non-Hodgkin's. It is a hereditary condition and it can run in families. And then, most likely it's the first degree relatives who can be impaired with this kind of celiac manifestation. So basically, if you see in this slide, basically gluten contains gliadin. Now this gliadin, when it is exposed in an individual who actually is, has an underlying celiac disease, then the nice villi which you can see up here, they will have an uptake, which is apoptosis and other phenomena. Eventually, it is taken down further with the T cell mechanism, secretory, pro-inflammatory cytokines, fibroblast activation, inflammatory mechanism. It will lead to overall villi fattening. So this villi has crypts. So this crypts become enlarged in severe form. So when we rate, why do we do endoscopies? It is to rate or grade this kind of flattening. So basically, Marsh 0 mein jo hota hai, you have complete villi. You'll not even see clear picture. But as the disease advances, you'll see complete flattening. Sometimes ye line hota bhi nahi. So it's completely flattened. So of course, an individual, whatever he or she may eat will not be absorbed. Of course, there'll be a lot of nutrition deficiency, weight gain issues, and so on. So I have this questionnaire which I had no time, so there might be on and off things. But I'm just going to just 1 second. I'll put my phone here. So yes. All right. So basically, you can have this questionnaire even in the clinic. Maybe I'll design this and share with you next week. So, do you have an immediate family member? Is the question that you'll ask in somebody who brings a kid with a history of poor weight gain or abdominal distension, diarrhea, or constipation. The second thing is a general well-being or general condition of that individual. So if you do a blood test and you see like unexplained anemia, if the child is fatigued, बहुत थक जा रहा है, failure to thrive, IgA deficiency is there, and you have proven that by doing a blood test, or there is a malnutrition, other vitamin deficiencies where you have treated, say, vitamin D, and but you have adequately treated, but the vitamin D levels are not coming up, then clearly this is a case of malnutrition, be it celiac disease or other forms of malnutrition disease disorder. Now, of course, celiac can affect other behavioral and CNS systems also. So I have this layout here. So if you see ADHD, anxiety, ataxia is also common. Foggy mind, a child will not be able to think clearly in the school. Depression again is common. If you have any child with developmental delay, of course, think about celiac. Child with frequent headaches, migraine again. Migraine thoda sa dicey ho sakta hai because a lot of other history in the family, other members can have migraine, so not clearly. But if there are other confounding factors, very irritable child, and if this child has seizure disorder, which is not getting resolved. Now, the other manifestation of celiac, it can coexist with other musculoskeletal conditions. So, of course, me, Shikha, and others, like, in the ortho field also, we have come across arthritis, joint pain, fibromyalgia in an older kid or teenager, numbness or pain in the hands and feet. Of course, you will come across osteopenia and osteoporosis. Short stature is again very common. So, of course, me and other endocrinologists work in sync with a lot of these issues with short stature. Now, the other challenge going forward, like, in the second decade of life is reproductive conditions. So, you'll come across delayed puberty, infertility in an older female is very common, or older male as well. Menstrual irregularities. So, if you have come across any female who has got irregular menses, was normal before, think about celiac. Miscarriages are very common, and so on. Now, celiac disease can exist with other autoimmune diseases. Can somebody or anyone can just tell me which are the most common ones that you have come across?
Down syndrome.
Perfect.
Psoriasis also we can get.
Good. Yeah, any skin conditions? Perfect.
Yeah.
Then,
IBS is another thing.
so IBS is kind of differential diagnosis for a celiac disease.
Okay.
Rheumatoid arthritis.
Good. A very common one, very common one.
Non-alcohol. Yeah.
Asthma, sir. Asthma.
Thyroid disorder, so hypothyroid, or autoimmune mediated hypothyroids, they are very common. Then the other ones is DM, diabetes. So type 1 diabetes. So we actually have, I think, 6 or 7 patients who have this coexisting other autoimmune disorders. So let's go run over this ones. So autoimmune hepatitis. So, we have come across even autoimmune hepatitis. So, very mild increase in SGOT, SGPTs, and then when you run an ANA in a celiac disease patient, it will come positive. Addison disease, then IBD again is not so common, but it can coexist. As Dr. Anjali said, Downs, chronic recurrent pancreatitis, cardiomyopathies, I've not seen one. IBS, they have said, but mostly it's a kind of differential. IgA nephropathy is common. NAFLD, primary biliary cirrhosis. Many of you said, someone said psoriasis, I think, yeah, PSC, and rheumatoid arthritis. So a lot of joint disorders, Downs, inflammatory bowel disease can exist. So let's run through the case. 4-year-old male with history of severe constipation for 1 year. Now, this child was toilet trained, bowel movements, hard stools every 5 to 7 days, associated with abdominal distension, poor appetite, and poor weight gain. Trial of laxatives, including sodium picosulfate, Duflac, PEG, they all did not show any improvement and failed the therapy. So, what should be the next step? Of course. So, other history, normal to stool pattern, before age 1 year. So actually they start getting exposed by the time we start weaning, say by 6 months or, 5 to 7 months ke beech mein. That's when the symptoms starts picking up. Weight at 3 years for this child was 12.7, and even after 1.2 years or 1.5 years was 13.2, only 500 gram weight gain. Now, abdomen had fecal mass which was palpated. Hemoglobin was 9.2, slightly lower MCV, and thyroid was normal. So in this child, so if you see the growth chart here, he was on 15th. Now he had a downfall, so he was on 3rd right now. when I saw him. Height wise, again, he was on 50th and then started descending towards like 15th. Now differentials were again, as we all spoke about, functional. Child jab aata hai, we always say functional, khata nahi hai, picky eater, but that's not always true. Celiac again in somebody who has got distension with features, IBS as madam said, but it's more like a differential diagnosis. So we did TTJ which was elevated, and then again I plan to do an endoscopy to have the grading, which showed March 2 on that. So his TTG IJ was 146. Now this is like, what we call scalloping. Actually, it's like, see on a bigger screen, you cannot see with the visible eye, but you see this, these are nice scallops. And in advanced disease, you will see complete flattening. So this is like, grade 1 to 2, and then they start flattening out like on the right side picture. Now, again, interesting thing was we did a level for the father also. Father again had symptoms, was diagnosed as IBS for over like, 2 decades or so. So again, his TTG was positive and both were diagnosed, father and son, as celiac disease. Now, going towards some newer tools, any questions on that case?
So is it more common among North Indians?
Yeah, so ma'am, yeah. So definitely. So North Indians actually we say is more closer to like the American population. I wouldn't say 1 in 100, but definitely 1 in 300. Compared to Maharashtra, I would say 1 in 500. Going further south, 1 in 800. So as you go further south, it goes on decreasing. That's the Indian data actually. But I think since there is a lot of mixing, we see more commonly in Gujarat. So there are a lot of Rajasthanis who move towards Gujarat, and a lot of Rajasthani move towards Maharashtra as well. But further south, they are very less. Yes.
How earliest you can diagnose celiac?
So celiac disease, sir, anywhere from 6 months onwards, we can diagnose. Initially, the levels will be like, they can be negative. So it's false negative because it's more like an evolving disease, and over a period of time, you can pick up better. So ideally, 1 year plus is an ideal time to do the test.
So do you feel every constipated patient we should go for this?
No, ma'am. A good question, but not necessarily. So basically, in a constipated, so again, as we used to say, celiac is more common presentation with diarrhea. But recently, like 30 to 40% do have older kids do have more of constipation. Having said that, number one is try and focus on their diet, and the other one is medication. The max, the yeah. So
So
basically,
when we should do TTG in constipated patient?
so, ma'am, if you have a child who's a poor eater, failure to thrive, short stature, with constipation, bloating, distension, who has failed the therapy at least minimum for 3 months with adequate treatment and diet plan, in those cases, yeah, of course, we should run thyroid as well as celiac panel.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Can someone tell me which test to do?
TTGA.
So, what do we?
TTG-IgA.
Good. Anybody else?
Anti-gliadin antibodies
Very good,
are done
very good, Dr.
nowadays.
Anirada. Yes, yes, perfect. And do so the
Total
other thing that, sorry,
and total IgA.
that's good. Yeah. So I was just going to come to that because a lot of Indians do have IgA deficiency. In those cases, it will be a false negative again because actually the Ig levels are not right, so TTJ won't be right. So in those cases, we should do an IgG. TTG IgG is available along with endomycin antibodies as well as DGP if the child is less than 2 years. I have that in the another slide. So this is something new that has come up in US, which is called gluten detect. Basically, we don't need it because if you look at the expenses at the bottom, stool wala, like 2 pack of stool is $50, $95 for urine and 180 for Pelka pack. Basically, it's to see whether a child is following the gluten-free diet or if there was any exposure, or to prove the restaurant wrong, you can use it. So basically, it's like, it's more like a pregnancy kit or a COVID kit where if you're sensitive, then, it turns red or pink. And if not, then it's green. It can be done through urine. So urine ke liye basically it's within 24 hours and stool can be picked up within 48 hours. So ways of gluten exposure can happen to a patient. So, a lot of families will come and they do come saying that, are ekdam strict diet. So I have a child actually from Bhiwandi. Again, they hail from Rajasthan. And then the mother is like, so she's got thyroid. Rashmi is also following her from Endopart. So she's got thyroid, she's got diabetes, and she's got celiac. So she's got all the components. And then a lot of times on and off, she will just say ki completely follow kari, but ho nahi raha. So, exposures can happen because of ongoing symptoms. So symptoms are not resolved. Of plain restaurants, not in India, but West, they do have a lot of restaurants which say gluten-free, but, they're not always true. Restaurant cross-contamination. So again, a single 20th million part of any gluten can make it very sensitive for a gluten exposed child, celiac disease child. Again, home cross contact. So we always say chakla balan, everything should be separate for all the kids with celiac disease. Have a separate cupboard for them and make sure that you do not make their chapatis or their anything with uh, or their own food containing gluten along with the child's food. Then again, social setting, cross contact, it can happen while passing through a lane. So I had one very interesting patient from in Akola, if I'm not wrong, and child was very this thing. So he was failure to thrive. Um, Celiac disease was confirmed. Mother again came to me, and then we realized that there was a chakki behind the house. So chakki se dust aa ke the child had symptoms coming back and forth. Then again, if you have trace gluten in any food, even if it's labeled free, then again, a lot of oats are manufactured in a processing unit which has gluten.
So there is no space in between.
So, and then a lot of syrups that we give contains gluten because that's the binding agent. So in an older kid with celiac disease, try and give them capsules or tablets if possible, because syrups, even if they don't mention, they contain gluten. So this is like, 1 in 100 worldwide have celiac disease. 1 in 10 family member risk of developing celiac disease, and 30% diagnosed still do not present with symptoms and, on the gluten-free diet. Let me just bring it. So, this is what we come across. My patient has a mismatch between the serology and the biopsy. So that's a very common scenario that we actually talk about in the our gut meeting or gastro meeting. So serology is positive. So say TTG is positive, but biopsies are interpreted as normal. So it depends on the histopathologist also what kind of exposure he or she has with celiac disease patient. So was gluten intake restricted in advance of biopsy? So if you restrict the gluten, of course, the biopsy is going to come normal. So we say that at least 2 weeks के लिए अगर stop कर दिया है, give gluten at least 2 pieces of bread or 4 pieces of glucose, I mean parley biscuits for 2 weeks, and then we'll do endoscopy and prove it whether it is celiac or not. So if the answer is no, the gluten was not restricted, then review biopsies again with an experienced histopathologist. Again, we have to take at least 6 samples from the duodenum first and the second part. Consider repeating serology from some other lab because we know that not all the labs have the guidelines that they follow clearly. Send HLA. So in extreme cases where everything is negative, we do send HLA DQ2, DQ8 because if those are falling into DQ2, which you see here, and DQ8, then they are likely having celiac disease. Now, results of HLA typing, if it is positive, then patient may have potential or something called as latent celiac disease that happens in early infancy. So, provided sufficient gluten intake, preceding biopsy was done, sufficient and well-oriented biopsies were taken, and there was a lack of evidence for other IBD inflammatory bowel disease. Now, continue to follow unrestricted gluten-containing diet, and then repeat the TTG-IgA to rule in or rule out in cases where there is poor growth or something. Any questions here? Okay. So, what are the
There's
available
one
tests?
more. Yeah, Lalit, there is one more test which is done in infants, which we don't do TTGA. So, which one is that?
Yeah, the next one. So here, one second. So yeah, so that is DGP, deaminated gliadin protein, IgA, and then you should also send IgG.
Okay.
So DGP, IgA, and IgG. In cases where there are equivocal results, we also send endomycin antibodies, which is EMA, again IgA and IgG. So if you look on this slide, TTG IgA sensitive 0.9 to 1, which is good, and specificity is around 0.9 to 1. So in a child less than 2 years, as Dr. Anjali was asking and saying, TTG, IG, and DGP both should be done. Even if the IgA to TTG is negative but very high suspicion, upper endoscopy with biopsy should be done. Endoscopy again is the gold standard. Sometimes in India, parents say no. Just last week, I think Dr. Das ka patient, and then I tried telling him because he was not somebody from Rajasthan. He was probably from Orissa. So I said, let me prove whether that's really falling into Marsh criteria. He's not showed up yet, so we'll see. So the other things that we need to do is CBC, complete metabolic profile, and then serum vitamin D3 levels, which are often low in a celiac disease patients. Now, treatment is lifelong adherence to a gluten-free diet. Do not go for any cereals. Just make sure that the labeling is right. Again, another facts are many medicines contain gluten. So some countries have preparation that will mention that it is a gluten-free syrup or solution. Then you can go for it. But India, I haven't seen on the backside of the packaging. Now, there's a myth that by the autism group that investigate these claims and found insufficient evidence of clear benefit when switching children with autism to a gluten-free diet. So I don't think we do it anymore, but yeah, the developmental people will be better to tell me that. So some promising futures. So these are actually the ongoing phase 2 studies. There was one phase 3 study, but that has been discontinued. So all the studies, some are for the enzymes, some are like a coating medication, which will actually coat the lining, and somebody will be able to eat gluten. But a lot of them are with enzymes. So basically, it will degrade the gliadin and help recover the villi and all. So take home from here is GI symptoms usually starts between 6 and 24 months after the introduction of gluten in the diet. A dramatic rise in the incident rate of celiac disease has been reported since 2001. Europe and US again a very high number of 1 is to 80 to 1 is to 300 children. And India, North and Western regions have prevalence of around 1 in 500 to 1 in 800. Screening for celiac disease is recommended for suggestive symptoms or in the groups which have increased risk regardless of the symptoms. So initially they won't have symptoms, but maybe they are 8, 9, 10, they can present with symptoms. They become teenagers, then they go into the adult life, and that's when they get carried away. They will not follow with the doctors, and that's when the issues start. TTG-IG is a very sensitive and specific test. In a child who is less than 2 years, along with your TTG-IG, also do a DGP, which is deaminated gliadin protein. Write it clearly because a lot of labs will not be able to pick it up. Always send IgA and IgG both in case they are affording. Endoscopy, in case of high suspicion or even to prove the Marsh criteria, we should go for endoscopy, which is the gold standard. And also always run annual CBC, TTG, IgA, vitamin D3 levels because they are the markers that the child is doing right. Thank you.
I had a question.
Yeah.
Abroad, they use this genetically modified wheat. Is that one of the reasons why there is a increased prevalence of incidence of celiac disease there?
So actually, yeah. So we have been saying a very good question, ma'am. We have been saying that a lot of times the IBD and the celiac disease started, the number started increasing, the prevalence increased in late 90s and 2000 when the modified products were used. So basically modified genetically anything wheat and wheat-based products. So that can be one, but the West always had a higher number, especially the Scandinavian countries also. So Finland, Norway always had a higher number where they don't use much of genetically, changed products. So that, but again, IBD is on the rise as well, and we see the IBD rise in India also, Crohn's, as well as your ulcerative. So again, it's one of the reasons that the numbers are higher now. Of course, we are picking up more with all the advances that we do. But yeah, that might be one of the factors. We always say it's environment.
Is it like the stress, which is or the stretch coping strategies are different nowadays? Is the reason of having more IBD or more celiac disease?
So yeah, ma'am. Basically, both of them can be genetically only. Stresses can worsen the symptoms, but not necessarily like present. I mean, stress cannot just present as in a form of celiac or Crohn's, but they will definitely worsen the symptoms, especially in the IBD patients, not as much in celiac.
And I think Dr. Ruchira is also on the panel. So she is, of course, a very well-known pediatric hemato-oncologist. So regarding anemia and iron deficiency anemia and celiac disease, so when do we, resistant anemia? So when do we think of celiac?
Ruchira is here.
Yeah, Ruchira? Dr.
So,
Ruchira
ma'am,
Mishra.
and therefore, if you're finding that within a month of them not
Yeah.
Yes, madam. Yes, Ruchira,
We can
madam.
hear you,
they
Ruchira.
should be
Yeah.
given IV iron growth and yeah. It's a very common thing to see growth failure and anemia in these children. So you start with oral iron. You find that they're not increasing their hemoglobin level within 2 weeks itself, then these are candidates for IV iron therapy.
Can I ask another question?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, Anjali.
Yeah, Lalit, also can celiac disease be asymptomatic? Because there was a 12-year-old girl who was just short. She had no symptoms. She was active, alert, eating well. Only her height wasn't increasing, and her mother was worried about that, so we referred her to an endocrinologist. And before he did any workup, he said, "Let us first rule out celiac disease." So I want to know, an asymptomatic short stature, would you also investigate for celiac disease?
Definitely, ma'am. Definitely. In last 5 years, I think there will be a lot of changes. So not just IGF and other things that endos will do. They also run TTG. So we have very renowned, experienced endos who have been working in sync. Because as I said, celiac can present in any form. Short stature, failure to thrive is we'll see. But just amenorrhea or menstrual irregularities can also be there. So I think those subtle symptoms can always be there. I think one needs to be watchful, and everything has been ruled out. There's nothing wrong in just running a TTG-IG in this case.
Now,
There is
yeah.
another question in the chat box. So Dr. Clarence wants to know whether probiotics role in this celiac disease.
So good question actually. Probiotics, what happens is the villi flattening. So there can be a lot of dysbiosis in such scenarios. So it's a good idea and always give at least 2 weeks of good probiotic just once a day for all the patients to begin with initially. So just of your choice, you can always give a good probiotic.
Any probiotic you mean?
I'll go with lacto GG because that's the one which has been studied more and has good evidence.
So zinc and even vitamin A is known to regenerate the epithelium or villi. So they are also to be supplemented.
So what I usually do is I give vitamin D. So of course we do vitamin D3 levels. So we give it whatever the levels are based on that. But then to begin with, I just do if the levels are okay, then I give every weekly for 4 weeks or 8 weeks, depending on what things are, and then every month. The second thing is again multivitamin because they have a lot of micronutrient deficiencies as well. So it's always a good idea to supplement the micronutrients because we will not check them eventually. So that gives them enough time once you have put them on a GFD diet, gluten-free diet, along with the supplements. And a calcium supplement can add on.
Lalit, now there is a trend where most young mothers are giving their children makhana because of the fear of introducing wheat very early. And so they don't give wheat, they don't give rice, and they give makhana powder. अभी मैंने उसको मखाना पाउडर खिलाया. So I'm a little worried about this trend. And is it something that really will stop gluten enteropathy?
No, good inputs actually, ma'am. You know what happens if we don't introduce, then there is this allergic march. Introducing it too early and introducing too late
Too
can
late.
actually affect the child. So ideal time is, whatever you pick up 5.5 months onwards.
6 months.
I think all the items should be introduced by 7 months in small amounts to see the good, whether the child is really this responsive to not. The other thing is just by not giving is basically making them gluten on a gluten-free diet. So of course we'll never know. But as the child grows, of course, they will be exposed to gluten and they will have the symptoms.
Thank you so much. Very good practical tips from you, Dr. Lalit Verma, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you,
I
everyone.
had one more.
Another more question. Yeah. Okay, Anjali.
uh, no, I actually forgot. Is there any way to prevent this allergy or this immune response of gluten? Is there any genetic this which is coming up or?
So I was just going through a lot of research. Of course, they've not completely given the details out, but they are coming with a lot of enzyme therapies in kids with parents with celiac disease. So maybe that is one of them. But what I see a lot of there, it's said it's discontinued. So in phase 3 trials, a lot of them have been discontinued. So they have not even reached phase 3 or past phase 3. So it's very difficult. I don't think we are completely be able to prevent it, but again, we'll be able to manage it in future, I think.
And I think a South Indian diet of idli, chutney, sambar, and dosa is one of the best diets.
Best. I always say go with the South Indian diet. If in doubt, just eat South Indian food.
That because I'm a South Indian.
Achha,
That's
you are.
good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Maybe,
Anjali, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank
All
you,
right.
Doctor. Yeah. Thank you,
All
Dr.
right.
Lalit
Thank you,
Verma,
everyone. I
sir.
have to go back to the
Thank you,
hospital.
Lalit.
So
Yeah,
thank
yeah.
you. Thanks,
Thank you,
ma'am.
Thank you,
Lalit.
Lalit. Thank you
Thank
so
Thank you,
much.
ma'am. Bye.
Yes.
8th May is observed as Thalassemia Day to spread awareness about thalassemia. The theme this year is empowering lives, embracing progress, and equitable and accessible thalassemia treatment for all. To give more insight about all this and to prevent the thalassemia spread and awareness about the treatment, the diagnosis and prevention, we have Dr. Usha Dave Madam. She is a medical geneticist and neuroscientist. She is specialist in metabolic and genetic disorders. She was a national president of ISPAT and she has more than 100 publications under her credentials. She's been invited by Government of India for screening of hemoglobinopathies in Odisha, and which by a novel method and which we will be learning from her. Dr. Usha Dave, madam, we welcome you
Ca-
all.
Can I say a few words about
Yes,
her?
yes, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, yeah. So 1 month ago, on 8th of May only, we met Dr. Usha Dave. Dr. Jayashree Deshpande had arranged a diagnostic camp at Vasai. And in our first camp, we had 100 people who were medical, paramedical workers and doctors, of course, medical and paramedical workers, where she conducted free tests. And 10% of them were found to be traits. Now, how fantastic can this be? Just with 2 drops of blood. And not only that, after that, we have conducted one more such diagnostic camp at DM Petit Municipal Hospital for ANC mothers, where it is most needed. So the dream of of Mr. Narendra Modi of trying to eliminate thalassemia is being done right at home, and such an important, such a bedside tool for that. So I was so happy that we have Dr. Usha Dave with us.
And on 22nd of June, we will be screening children under 5 years for the
Super.
100 children in the tribal area of Ikramgarh. And that too free of charge by Dr. Usha Dave, madam. We welcome you, madam.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I thank the organizers of IAP Palghar. It's my honor and privilege to share my experience in the field of genetics here. It happened that it was hemoglobinopathies, which is one of the disorders and which is there now on priority, and I will touch upon it. But as we said, it's the genetics. I thought in the pediatric practice, what are the conditions? What are how you can suspect genetic conditions? So I will start sharing my slides. So I thought I will just touch upon that, sensitize you on that, so that where on the day-to-day practice you can come across, think about it, and then from the early detection and prevention point of view, you can handle your cases And I'll just touch upon some of our cases also here, which can be, as in just an example. Because see, the genetics is such a vast topic, and it's the Bibles are written. And so I'll just start saying, maybe little I'll hurry up in the thing. So pragmatic genetics in pediatric clinical practice is the topic given to me, which in that I'll little bit touch upon what we did on the hemoglobinopathies, which is the national burden now. So when we do the burden, we hear the word genetics. That means we should know what is DNA, right? The DNA. So I'll just have a couple of slides to introduce you with that, so that you can understand also what is the basis of genetics, when to suspect, right? If you see over here, I like to see this slide show to everyone. These are must be knowing some of you, Watson and Crick, who had visited Tata Institute of Fundamental Research in 60s after their Nobel Laureate Prize for discovery of the DNA molecule. So they had come to India. So DNA is nothing but it is the blueprint of it is the unit, okay, and it has nothing but so many coiled chromosomes. So all the DNA which is coiled in the chromosomes, and that is your makeup, okay. So chromosomes are made of DNA. Each contains DNA in a linear order
Madam,
on
we are
all
not
these
able to see your
chromosomes.
screen.
You cannot see my screen?
No, we are not able to see.
Oh, sorry. Share?
Yeah, you have to share it.
I'll share here. Shall I go back on the first slide?
But
Yes, we
good.
haven't seen any.
Good. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Now?
No, madam. Now we are able to see. Yeah.
Okay. So, 1 minute. Can you
Please
see
make it
now?
full screen.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, madam. Yeah.
Yeah,
Can you
madam.
see now? Okay. So this is the thing which I was just telling you. One slide only finish, as a Watson and Crick who had visited India for, and that was the discovery of the DNA molecules, and that's how the whole revolution in genetic science took place. So just a little bit briefly, a few slides on understanding the genetics. I thought that it is nothing but the human blueprint, right? Every individual has its unique, and each one differs from each other is only by 0.1 to 0.2%, nothing more than that. And that's why all other functions which are given on your chromosome, which are in a linear fashion, the genes are there, and those are commonly shared by all of us, okay. So we differ in a very, very small percentage from each other. So this is called as a karyotype, and then we have 23 pairs. Every pair is there, and one chromosome of it is inherited from each parent, mother and father. So your makeup is always from the 50% from your mother, 50% father, and there are called as a 22 chromosomes. And the third pair which you see in the last quadrant over here is the X and Y, which makes you as a male or a female, okay. So for example, the sickle cell disease has a chromosome number 11. So gene will be there on the chromosome 11 to function it, okay. Now little bit you must understand some terminologies when you see the genetic reports or you suspect genetic disorders, that there are some characters which are dominant and some are the recessive, okay. So the recessive means it is only out of two pairs, it will be the gene only on the one chromosome will be there, while it has to express the disorder, it has to have the both genes, okay. Well, there could be some which are dominant, which we say, and even in a 50%, even if it is there, it can express the disease. So based on that, we as a geneticist called as a dominant disorder, recessive disorder, etc. Okay. So just for you to understand, when we say phenotype, that is our physical presence, right? And here are these two chromosomes. When we say homozygous, means both chromosomes have defect. These are called as alleles. It's a heterozygous, means there will be defect on one chromosome, one will be normal. Okay. Now, when you go again higher and higher, these are your 46 chromosomes, and this is your blueprint, right? Now, about after the human genome mapping, almost 20 or 30,000 genes are discovered and associated with diseases. So there are those thousands of disorders and they are associated with genes. Everything is a map. And the bioinformatics has gone, it's into such a level that you will be amazed to see what the knowledge which is pouring off every day. So now, having given this as the background, in your pediatric practice, you will have a childhood disabilities, right? There will be birth defects, mental motor deficiency, autism we saw just now, learning disability. There could be someone as a deformity and the birth defects and genetic syndrome, vision, hearing impairment. Okay, so there could be genetic, familial, or non-genetic also. So how would you find out? So before you suspect, the first thing is you have to rule out whether it's a genetic or a non-genetic factor for the disability of the child or neurodevelopmental disorder or whatever the patient has come to you, right? Now, in this thing, I will just expose you to these some of the genetic tools. These are very important, very easy, but by which you get quite a number of genetic tools. For example, we have the whole family tree. We take in 3 generations of it. Like we have grandmother, aunt, uncle, mom, dad, cousins, sisters, right? But sometimes this, your brother will have something like a hair, may not be with the dad, but maybe in the third generation with someone. Or she will be having a long hair, may not be like her mother, but like aunt. So sometimes it skips and it comes in next generation. So the same thing happens in case of the disorders also. So how do we know? There is called as a pedigree charting. Okay. So this is nothing but when we ask the questions, the 3 generations, we have a symbols as a male, female, those who are affected are what, those who are just carrier or recessive, we have a halfly thing. If it is a marriage within your cousins or blood relation, we have 2 lines, only marriage, 1 line. So these are the international symbols. So when we send these, we also can have these information sent to your international colleagues or whatever national laboratory thing, but in a short. So this is nothing but the short form and giving the history. So when we do like that, when we suspect everything, so then we do like a first generation, second generation, third generation. Now in that, when we find both boys and girls are affected, or then we know that these are on autosomes and not sex chromosome as X and Y. Okay. When we see the marriages, we ask them, is there any affected? Is there any carrier? What is it? So when we find the relation is there, we know it's a consanguineous marriage. It could be autosomal recessive, etc. So all these things give us the clue because consanguinity is very higher in genetic disorders, metabolic genetic disorders, etc., and malformations. Okay. Another tool that I would like to introduce is the dermatoglyphy. And this science is our old ancient science as the chakras and walls which we see. And in case it's abnormal, it is by 20 weeks or something in the fetal stage, you are formed with these lines, born with these lines. Okay. So this also supports the genetic counseling because when we see this or when we can show it to the parents as see, this is a simian crease which is abnormal. There are no 3 lines, but only 1 line. Okay. And many of the genetic syndromes and abnormalities are very well described with the abnormalities as such. So you one by one, you start accumulating the evidences which even clinically like it before investigation that you can suspect as a genetic condition. And now here is the thing which I would just like to expose you. This is a karyotype. These people are required over here are the experts who knows how to read this, which is a chromosome number 1 or a 2, or whether there is a translocation and this fraction of chromosome 22 has gone and attached to 11, etc. Sometimes the genes are also labeled as such. So when there is a trisomy or something, we have instead of 2, there will be 3, dots as such. Then there is a sequencing where you saw ATGC, you may be knowing DNA. These are nothing but the 3 nucleotides you may be knowing, must have read that it gives as a protein, right? So anything change in that nucleotide. And now these are the technologies as next generation sequencing and chromosomal microarray. Chromosomal microarray, I will show you through the cases also. It is nothing but the high resolution of karyotype. For example, these are the bands which are seen. They are at a very, very high level. Micro deletion duplications are done. And here it is a next generation which are faster and can give you the result. So now, based on our suspicion, based on our general information, dysmorphology, family history, etc., and all, then we decide what could be the disorder and which test to be given. Because, like abroad, we do not just have to give all the tests; we have to make it very cost effective. For which you have to have that knowledge to see: is it a monogenic disorder? Is it a beta thalassemia? I suspect hemoglobinopathy. Is it a recurrent abortion, or is it a chromosomal aneuploid, is something like a Down syndrome? Then I give a karyotype or a fish. If I do not know cardiomyopathy, which is very common, and now they are also saying that it should come as a newborn screening test and just screen every cardiomyopathy. Autism also is there. So based on which defect, whether it is based on the single gene, whether it is the larger deletion, we just then advise the test. So when we suspect the genetic disorders, which comes to the genetic counselor is very another important profession which is rising. These are the people who will be not medical geneticists or genetic counselor, but more than the medical genetic as a scientist and all, these are the people who facilitate the clinician. They give those other information also. And we also have that board of genetic counselors of India. Okay, now for your information. So based on such thing, provisional diagnosis we make, genetic or environmental, and then you go for the proper genetic investigation. When you have a couple with a young affected child, naturally they will go for the next pregnancy. They wouldn't like to have a similar child. And then in that case, it is very important that even if we are as a clinicians and pediatricians, we should know, we should be able to give that information. Which genetic counselor also can give if you are not there having a time, and for these things take a long time for genetic counseling. So what are the pregnancy tests? Can you do this? What are the tests that can be done? How you can avoid it? And so on and so forth. So birth defects, dysmorphism, developmental delay, disability, all these are in your pediatric practice. It will be there based on certain clinical thing, whether it is a hepatosplenomegaly, there is a dysmorphic feature which is like a Down syndrome, there is ambiguous genitalia, or 3 generation having asthma. Okay, we do not have in our thing. We used to say cystic fibrosis is rare and it is a disease of the Caucasian, but they were that time not looked after, or we do not have those many tools and investigation to see it. Okay, so here it is, sometimes couple have both children affected. So then it becomes of uttermost important, even as a clinician and pediatrician, to guide them properly for the accurate genetic investigation which are now available. So based on the investigation, if I know dysmorphism, I will do it. Looking at the child, I will have a karyotype or a microarray. Mental retardation, familial thing, X-linked retardation, or both autosomal that. Skeletal dysplasia, MR microcephaly, you just rule out whether it was a birth perineal hypoxia or anything also as HRA. So rule out that. Autism behavior is really coming up in a very high way now, if you see, because that is in US now it is 1 in 64. It was 20 years back when we used to have autism or a Rett syndrome case in a clinical meeting, as such. And then we used to present it in a clinical meeting. And there are many things. There are now genes that have come out of it. There are the groups of genes which you can do. It may be or it may not be there. It's a very heterogeneous. But ADHD, hyperactivity, sometimes associated with it or not, or a very, very typical on DSM-5 criteria autism, that is very important to know. So we'll go through some case scenario just to tell you how we as the geneticist work, and how in your scenario also you can pick up, you can suspect, because even if there is no treatment or a gene therapy as such, we can always prevent it by a proper counseling. Okay. Now, Down syndrome is the most, the common disorder which is results because of the extra genetic material of whole chromosome 21. That's why it's called also as a trisomy. Is the most common disorder of mental retardation, or now we say as intellectual disability. Don't use that term. It will be mental and motor delay with characteristic dysmorphic features. We will have a simian crease. It may be or it may not be. Sometimes on one hand, but very slanting eyes, base, nasal, breach, all these short stubby fingers you can see, and trisomy. Okay. So, but and let's remember, this is not very just now which has come out. It is almost 2,500 years ago also. If you see the statues, they were there. Now, in your practice, you must have seen sometimes rare, because genetic disorders are supposed to be rare. And if you see the hirsutism, very coarse features, you will suspect lysosomal storage disorder. And again, there are different 20 to 22 disorders with specific enzyme deficiency. So those who are expert on the lysosomal storage disorder laboratories, they do this, but at least you should suspect and send it to the proper geneticist, okay, for the further counseling and thing. Now, sometimes the patient comes with such an dysmorphic features. We know there are quite a lot of genetic syndromes having very characteristic feature. So this is something like a Cornelia de Lange syndrome. We have seen a lot of such cases because ours is a referral genetic syndrome. We have done also prenatal diagnosis. Or if there are two brothers is again this is the X-linked mental retardation we call as a fragile X syndrome, where X chromosome it has in the end fragile side. So all this knowledge becomes very important. If you take a genetic history, if you see here, they have a large outward ears, triangular chin as such, and mental retardation. This was the boy who came to us, where the mother said that he's, gynecomastia. You can see over here. Now his friends are, teasing him when he's going to play and all. Till the time of 12 years, I think nobody had thought of it. So when such a child when came, we did the thing, and then we found that it is a Klinefelter syndrome, which is nothing but the 47XXY. So then further counseling, further treatment, further rehabilitation modes and approaches we have to explain. Here I was telling you as a neurobehavior syndrome. In that it comes as a classical, as I was telling you, DSM-5 criteria can define it as a very, and whether it's a definite autism or atypical. Rett syndrome is there also. If you see these children, and the hallmark of such children is that it is the 18 to 24 months is a normal, then there is a neuroregression and loss of acquired milestone. So these are the hallmarks of very typical autism. So going into the history, going into the developmental milestones becomes very, very important. And another is the stereotype movements, lack of eye-to-eye contact, etc. So even if it is like that, then you can refer it to the geneticist or a genetic. Now remember, the autism is also associated with quite a lot of genetic conditions or neurologic conditions also, such as fragile legs, tuberous sclerosis. This is again a triad. If you have a chagrin patch, if you have a epilepsy, you can definitely think of a genetic condition. Even PKU, Asperger, etc. And even 10 to 15% of Down syndrome will show you autistic features. Doesn't mean he is an autistic child as such. Okay. So let's not label them as such. Okay. So here, as I was telling you, karyotype is the conventional method, but it's slowly, not even slowly, it's rapidly, almost it is getting replaced by the microarray, because this detect the changes which can be more than 1 MB also, and as small as 10 KB can be also decided. So that is called the high resolution microarray chips. And all this which we see here band as a coil, that DNA can be here seen as a microdeletion duplication, which you can see here. So that same chromosome over here. So when you see the report, or when you suspect that you have to go do microarray, I suspect some genetic disorder, dysmorphism, etc., you should know what is it that the report is given. So this is only one chromosome which is shown over here, and this was as the autism susceptibility gene we identified, and what is the loss of that segment in the subtelomeric region, that is the end of chromosome on chromosome 7. So you can imagine how much of a detailed information that we get, and you can help the patient accordingly. Now let's come to the metabolic disorder, which you may see it most often also, or NICU babies or infants also, where there could be seizures, lack of apnea, the metabolic acidosis will be there, high ammonia will be there, intensive it may be monitoring, etc. So, and you may suspect like that. Now that time we have here is the child who is now almost 20 years, but he was detected at this infant age. There was no need to die, but his earlier baby girl had died, and it was the mother who had very nicely noticed that this my boy child is exactly having severe metabolic acidosis, refusal to feed, failure to thrive, etc. Okay, so we had quickly done it and found it as a methylmalonic acidemia. We had put him on a proper diet because it is a vitamin B12 responsive, carnitine, biotin, and very nicely till 20 years of age. And now recently, now they came to know, and now the boys are, these are young generation is also the Google generation. And we did molecular where we found that pathogenic, the variant in them, in their family, and that's how we could counsel them. There are so many other disorder which could be the epilepsy, rashes, thing as a biotinidase deficiency. And this is the baby which came as such, and with a rash, and we had done the enzyme assay. That time it was a partial deficiency on very good treatment with biotin, high molecule, high dose 10 mg per kg. We saw here you can see here the loss of red rashes, gain of hair, so and the developmental milestones improve. So you can definitely intervene and have the better outcome if you diagnose it at the earliest stage. This was a child, is the only child, it's a propionic acidemia, very severe in the neonatal period. But the parents were so attentive and they quickly diagnosed. And this is the case which is called as a mass spectrum. And we do from urinary filter paper, urine soap filter paper, only 100 and almost 40 plus conditions like that. So you have a large spectrum. Even if you don't have to be expert in metabolic disorder, only those basic characteristics which are, see, all these organic amino are overlapping features, right? So you don't have to accurately diagnose which amino acid it is, but we can help you in that finding out, and which the boy is on very properly monitoring on the therapy and treatment. Even IQ is good, and the parents are also monitoring. So this is an example of prevention of disabilities if you do early diagnosis and proper diagnosis, because we do not have a newborn screening in all. It's not a compulsory like abroad. Now, at times you have a people who are very affordable, very good. Now, here if you see is a Canavan disease as a neurodegenerative disorder. On our mass spectrum, just from the urine, we did a confirmed diagnosis of it. Having parents also having a similar 50% defect. That's why we call it heterozygous. But it's not always that. And when the couple is not affording and poor, the babies die. Okay, but at such time when the babies are not there, keep the information, keep the blood sample, when they come, because that time they are not in a position. But when they come next time, you can always counsel and tell them about that. We can find out accurate, we can give you for the next normal healthy baby if you do your testing as such. Now, as I was telling you, congenital cardiomyopathy, common birth defect. And here it is the families with they own to consanguineous marriage from Buldhana. They had come, motor developmental delay. With this, hepatomegaly, we saw that, we suspected naturally some of the, one of the lysosomal storage disorder. And at that time we did the enzyme assay, which we could, but finally for the next pregnancy, they wanted to go is, so in that fetal genomic diagnosis is possible, because we did the mutation or genetic defect in this child, taking the blood, and where we found the precise the mutation and the chromosome abnormality, and confirm as a GSD 1A disorder. So these are the things where you can suspect, confirm the disease, and also do. Now, therefore, even if we are clinicians and pediatricians, we should know that we can do further future prenatal diagnosis, because you can find out actual enzyme mutation or a metabolic disorder diagnosis from the amniotic fluid or chorion. And we have a team over here where when once the confirmation is done, the next what we do is the prenatal diagnosis in their next pregnancy monitoring. We have a team who can do such also the biopsies, etc. And we do the genetic investigation. But even despite that, at times the cost becomes sometimes very important. Here is the ARC syndrome, which was the clinician and the radiologist had very nicely diagnosed. The early baby died, But the thing was that the couple were saying, and it was very proper in our Indian scenario, that though we both are the carriers, now we have to see our baby first. So let's do it in a baby. So it was that time very difficult, but we went blindly and we saw this is the gene, this is the defect for ARC syndrome as such, and let's see. And we just had the picture which this baby died, So confirmation was there clinical very nicely, but still we blindly went. Otherwise, for fetal diagnosis, you have to have the accurate diagnosis first in the index case. Okay. So when we did here on this, based on this only we did it as per the parents thing, because finally parents are the one who decide what, and it is their decision according to which we have to go. And we found that baby also defective, and therefore then they opted for MTP, but we have confirmed that that is the variant. But at times we do not have any paper. When the couple comes, the baby died, we just have a picture of them. We just gather the information, what is the clinical information was there. So based on that, here was one baby where we did not know what was the clinical diagnosis of first deceased child. But with this genomic diagnosis now, and based on this clinical thing, we just suspected something could be there. Now, based on that, we went on the couple. We explained them everything. What is the risk? What is the possibility? How we can do it? So all those things we explained to them, and then we found that both of them, they had some gene which could be defective, which are the carrier stage, 50%. So they themselves are not having that disorder. And that's how these genes we identified. And then they did it in the next pregnancy as such. And then they had a normal baby later on. So at times you have to find out based only on the disease cases, disease papers. And if you write down very detailed clinical history properly and your diagnosis, that always helps. And here is the last slide where we are in the assisted reproductive technology era, but at times we also have the errors here, like a nature, where this was a very, very good neonatologist or an OBGY person who sent the patient saying that there is a web neck and all, very nice, chubby child you can see over here. And they had has a single intrauterine pregnancy was there. Other prenatal were normal as such, but this was the baby out of born of IVF. Okay. And this is a non-disjunction, as I told you, that the two chromosomes didn't get separated, and one from mother, one from father. Instead of that, two from mother and one from father may come or not. So this is a triple X abnormality. Now this becomes very important as a clinician, pediatrician, that this baby is going to go to school. You have to have the knowledge about remedial therapy, speech therapy, or you refer to the genetic counselor. And how this baby should go in a school later on. The parents also you have to counsel. What is this chromosomal anomaly? What will happen to their child? And in case they have to go for the next pregnancy, what has to be done? So clinical genetic knowledge for genetic investigation is very, very important. Based on that, all these details we find out, is it a dominant character, recessive, is this a sex chromosome linked disorder, are they mitochondrial, is it epigenetic phenomenon, and which is like a environment and genetic interaction as such. Okay. Or are they specific chromosomal, whether I can do chromosome test, are they metabolic disorder, only single gene is responsible and I can do it, is the gene available, polygenetic, etc. So this knowledge becomes very, very important, and the burden of genetic disorders is not less. In the pediatric population, it is 30% almost, okay? And 1 in 500 families we say is directly affected, 1 in 50 is indirectly. Mental retardation and CP, they have almost most of the time genetic factors, okay? So common the genetic disorders, we can prevent it only by early detection and diagnosis, because newborn screening emerged as a health policy in 60s. Though in 80s and 90s we were promoting it, nobody was ready to take. Now in India, it is just in last one decade which it has come. So just to touch upon what is a newborn screening test, because as a pediatrician, you have to deal with it, give the information to the parents or the couples. If they have not done, even 1 month child, 2 months old child or the infant can do it. And it is a simple test which is for all newborn babies after birth. which can hinder the normal development. So these are the metabolic genetic disorders. They are which are most common because apparently the child is very normal at birth. You will not develop, and the abnormalities are developed later on. Okay. So if detected very early, then treatment can help in prevention of mental retardation or physical disability. So I thought I will just show you the NBS test, those who have not. And these dried blood spot tests later on can be confirmed. It comes as a positive because these are the tests which are for the high throughput test, and for the population they are used. And on the filter paper dried, the blood spot is taken. Now we have developed this test for also hemoglobinopathy. It's not only sickle cell, but even for the thalassemia, beta thal carrier, fetal, also other different variants you can do, and from the dried blood spot, and the same spot can be preserved for the DNA also. So there are the DNA can be extracted from this blood spot, and which becomes very helpful in their next pregnancy if the baby dies. Okay. So newborn screening test, remember, as a pediatrician, is not one test. It is a program. Okay. It is a program which is run by a team of people: parents counseling, genetic defect, the management of the child, genetic counseling, future pregnancy risk, everything is involved in this. So remember, it's not a test just positive, negative, and you just take it out. So these are the inborn errors of metabolic, which are most of the time in a pediatric thing you will see it. We were the first one to start in 98, GCMS diagnosis, which gives you confirmed diagnosis. You can have enzyme assays, but nowadays you have a further as a final diagnosis by a DNA, and the molecular GCMS diagnosis also you can do in metabolic disorders. So this is the thing which I just wanted to inform you. He is my mentor when we started in 98, the first lab in India. Some of you might be knowing this is Dr. Meena Desai, who had started first in Vadia Hospital, the newborn screening test for a thyroid thing. And based on our last more than 20 years from 2005, in a high risk babies who are sick babies, we can find out almost these are the 13 disorders. This has got a very high incidence, almost 1 in 55 to 250 or 800. So we had, recommended it to ICMR that in our country we can take this as the newborn screening disorders. So to end up is a genetic diagnosis is a challenge in genomic era, and all of you have to be also get accustomed to these terminologies and this era, genomic era, because prevention is certainly possible if knowledge and experience about the genetic approach and various genetic tests is available. It can be done in so many, like as I told you, syndromes, familial, inherited, birth defects, anomalies, dysmorphism, and then you think genetics. Okay, developmental disabilities, autism, even the family come. No, baby is alive, IUGR, stillbirth, neonatal, sibling death. The baby is coming to you in a crisis, but there are already sibling death. Nobody generally asks what is the history as such. So bad obstetric history, consanguinity. Majority of the neurological, neuromuscular disorders are genetic because 30% of genes are expressed in brains. That is the research. So one has to be very alert in thinking about it. And finally, it is a team which will not only include, as we say, general physician. They know each, and they are the three generations knowing that family, daughter-in-law, their husband, their children, as such. So they know very well what are the disorders or the defects in that family. And medical social worker, geneticists as such, which we are there, and the various scientists for various tests like biochemists, cytogenetics, molecular biologists, which are required for the investigation. So we have always to and fro talks and the dialogues going on for even for confirming one case. And in this thing, the genetic counselor can be a mediator, and become a member of the genetic team. You can start it as a very very simple thing. We had done such community surveys then in almost 2-3 decades back as a UNICEF project. We see in still a rural area that children, they bring them like this, and not as an infant, but now we have at even 3 months old also neurodevelopmental therapy. If you detect early, the outcome is good. we used to go in such areas where also we can, based on our health post map and the health post screening, primary health worker, teaching them, training them, and then making them aware, sensitize them, so then they would bring to you. So these are the health posts which used to go. I used to be very proud that I have an institution for this, but next door there will be a vast area where there will be so many children, which do not even know that for their investigation and therapy or a training, this is an institution. So awareness becomes very, very important. Communication also, and having the right type of the people working with passion is really the trust of this such thing. And no, nevertheless, that this science is new, so there are not that always the clinicians will know what are the tests to be done. They are always in a dilemma. But as I said, it's a teamwork. If you work in a team like expert lab scientists, pediatric neurologists, neonatologists, though they are not well versed with the DNA technology, still we can always exchange, make them aware of it, educate them. And significant contribution of expert geneticists and DNA becomes very important while helping clinicians for proper genomic test. Because in our scenario, we cannot just have patient just gives the money out of his own pocket, right? He is doing the treatment or a health. It's not like abroad that it is they have the insurance. So this knowledge helps in which proper genomic test that you should first give, interpretation of results. Okay, so let's not, sometimes they do clinician cost affordability and all, but it depends, we can always help them and find out, but not take a decision. Because I have seen even from the rural area people, they have sold off their farms, got the money, done the treatment for their baby. So we should not just be a bias and take a decision as such. And of course in India it's not like abroad. We have a challenges, we have different cultural practices, norms. Sometimes people will not come, they will not show that there was earlier child died like this, that was also dysmorphic. So taking out the history becomes very, very important. As we know, 27 now, the annual birth rate is that 27 millions now is, and high consanguinity, endogamous marriages, religious variation, all these contribute to the genetic diversity. So there is such a great demand scope. It is just we have to have our eyes open and just look for it and think genetics. That could be my message to you. Looking at these, my last more than 3 decades of work, I had felt this need, and that's how we had come out with this book in just the last year, where there are all aspects of genetics, genetic counseling, tests, clinical thing is involved. So those who are interested, is available with us for that the student and the PG doctors rate. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, madam. Newborn screening is definitely a game changer nowadays, and we understood a lot about how to suspect genetic disease and do the diagnosis. Now, at least we know where to refer. Please share your number and your address in the chat box so that everybody who is attending will understand where to refer the patient for the diagnosis.
Sure.
Can I say something, Jayashree?
Yes,
Dr.
Yes.
Usha Dave is associated with Navigene,
hmm.
which is very well known for their diagnosis, and Madam will share the number. So we have been sending quite a few newborn references to them.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Uh, okay.
Madam, your book is available on Amazon, or we...
Amazon, it is now very expensive, Anjali.
Okay.
We have
Yeah,
few copies printed for CMEs and for doctors and workshops, which is just 1,500 rupees. So if you just do GPay, the lab people will send it, courier it to you.
sure.
While when some of the people it's 3,000, 4,000, anything. I do not know why, but Amazon is very high. But those who are interested, I will always I can send to them. No problem.
Yeah, sure.
I have
Great.
some copies which are just for the PG, CMEs, doctors, got printed, and they had given us a discount at different rates.
Can I ask a question?
Share
Yes.
with number,
Yeah, Usha, if we suspect cystic fibrosis in a child, then
Yes.
what test will you recommend?
See, first thing is as per the newborn screening, if it's that infant, that sort of you can send for the newborn screening cystic fibrosis test, confirm it if it is positive, but still sometimes if it is a negative, false negative, one thing we must remember that there should not be any, if it is a false positive is okay, but there should not be any patient missed,
Missing.
which is wrongly thing. And another is in an Indian thing, you can also have a Delta 504 mutation, which is more common. But when we do that, and if it is negative, then you, and the clinically it's a very strong cystic fibrosis, then it is better you do clean exome sequencing, then it goes for that level.
Okay.
But clinically, if we correlate very well by having a dialogues and calling all the time, then there is no problem.
Okay, because there is a family I know whose first child had cystic fibrosis. The second daughter now has a baby who is 15 months old and who has no respiratory symptoms at all, but failure to grow. So, just wanted to know whether we have to rule out cystic fibrosis in this child and whether just a screening test will do or we have to go for clinical exam.
The clinical first is you can do first, because it's the cost factor is very important, right, for them. So in that case, you can just do first screening test. But as you know, the spectrum is very,
Wide.
wide. 69316. 1 minute. I'm just writing the number.
Yeah, sure.
98206931. Dr. David. That. So the thing is, we can do first as that. But if you strongly suspect, if you do clean exam, what will happen? Any other disorder which is there, other than that, will be also detected. And then
Okay.
it will be a cost effective thing and the counseling can be done.
Okay. Okay. So clinical
But
exam would be
we had one case which is from the Kolhapur family, which I showed you that three grandfather and all. Now, in that case, the grandfather brought the grandchild, son. Okay, he said, since the childhood, since my whole age, I am having this asthma, breathless thing, and all that. So this was a pulmonologist who had referred, and she said, I saw this, and this is like a atya, like this grandfather's one daughter. She is also having a similar thing, and now this is in their grandson has come, so it's a three generation. Now I do not suspect this, but I think cystic fibrosis must be there or something. And then how to go about it? So we got some sponsors. We did a family. It's a rare thing, and it's not a common mutation that came out, which is Delta 504. But we got a very rare novel thing which is in an Indian population, not reported in the world also. Okay, she presented that in her pulmonology thing. But to tell you the thing is, when they reach this familial thing, it's definitely genetic. And the spectrum of nowadays any clinical disorder, which we read it very nicely as a classic disorder in the books, it has not remained like that. It will have a mild, manifestation, severe manifestation, based on where the genetic defect is there, where is that the functional protein which is required to maintain that function is not there, how much quantity is not there. So then when you do these tests, it gives you better idea. But when you are clinically very strong in your diagnosis, tuck, 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 like our, books thing, then you can do the usual routine test.
how much would clinical exam cost?
Clinical exam, how much? 10,000 or 12,000, 15,000 something, I think. I'm not sure about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So right now, no, whole exam and clean exam is the same. The clinicians are referring as a whole exam sequencing. Because again, in that clean exam, if it doesn't come, then you go for health. It's something like CT scan में नहीं आया, अभी MRI करो.
MRI.
Better MRI, you do MRI. No, why waste money?
Correct.
So some clinician they send straight away for whole exam sequencing.
Thank you for your memorable presentation.
One more question.
Yeah,
Yes,
one
yes,
more
sure,
question,
sure. I'll be
Anjali.
happy.
Yeah. Hmm.
You showed dermatoglyphics. Now, there are many people who do dermatoglyphics, you said, na, that
Dermatography. Yes, yes.
Yeah, so a lot of people do this brain mapping through dermatoglyphics. So just out of the blue, what is your opinion?
It will be definitely, because individual to individual it differs. You are born with these lines, and that's why these are why brain mapping, even the prediction of it, because this is used in the forensic science. Okay, so forensic science also you may be knowing, and the DNA technology, genetic is very important. Whatever that 0.01, 0.1 you differ, that is identified as a paternity testing, which we also do paternity testing. So it is just the correlation. It will definitely come out something or the other. So that's how they do and try to link with the brain mapping.
I don't know if Dr. Ruchira is still online, so perhaps she can comment about this
Yeah.
spot test and newborn testing for hemoglobinopathies. Dr. Ruchira?
Dr. Ruchira, are you there?
Yes.
I think she has logged out.
Yeah, I think she has logged off. Yeah, I think she has logged out.
We would like to learn more from you, madam, again and again. And thank you for the memorable presentation and the great philanthropic support you and COM had, along with Dr. Uday Bodhankar sir has given us, along with Palghar Academy of Pediatrics, to
Yes.
do some work and some role in prevention of hemoglobinopathies in a tribal area as well as in the urban Vasai area. Thank you so much for that.
Yes, thank you. Because as a national president, we had to do some activities naturally, and this is my passion. So I got hold of Dr. Deshpande and I said, I pushed her. I said, let's do it. She also passionately said yes. And I also have suggested her that in case there are, we can have somewhere in the central thing, open a genetic clinic. I can come once in a month. We can have interesting cases, or the patients can be referred there. And I can. I'm not saying I can train you, but you people can develop a genetic department, genetic clinic in Vasai Virar area under IAP.
That's so great. That will be like a future thing, which will be helpful for all of our
All
patients.
of your patients. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Rachana Joshi.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Usha. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've given the lab number and thing also, those who want to attend. Okay.
Yes. Now we have another session where two interesting cases will be discussed. And to discuss, we have none other than our most enthusiastic, enigmatic, and dynamic past president, Dr. Anjali Gokarna, madam. Anjali, you like when the colors are around, when you are there, they are more brighter.
Thank you so
So
much.
we would like to learn from you also about the two interesting cases.
Yeah. So, good evening, everyone. And unfortunately, I could not prepare the presentation, but I shall make without a PPT presentation. After two wonderful PPT PowerPoint presentations by Lalit and by Dr. Usha, this is just going to be a talk. And but it is a very relevant subject that I have been seeing for the last 1 month or so. And ever since I have seen that, I have been able to diagnose even more patients. This child was a 15-month-old child who came with a history of 105 fever. She was admitted because of the high fever, excessive crying, and loose motions and vomiting. The child started getting mild fever 3 to 4 days back, but on the day of hospitalization, this child had 105 fever for which she was hospitalized. Her general condition was poor. She was having a little bit of edema over her periorbital region and just mild edema over the rest of the body. Her AF was normal. She had no meningeal signs. She was feeding according to the mother. There was no vomiting. There was vomiting. There was no refusal to feed, however. And and she had been traveling to her native some days ago. So with this history, the impression was, acute gastroenteritis with extreme dehydration and irritability. That was what was the reason for the poor condition. And so the child was hospitalized for 105 fever. As Jayashree had presented about hyperpyrexia. So this seemed like hyperpyrexia and not hyperthermia. And we had given her a push of IV fluids. We had to give her IV paracetamol, and the fever was brought down. She was kept in an AC room, etc. The fever was brought down, and we had started her on injection ceftriaxone in view of her poor general condition, as well as the high fever and loose motions and vomiting. But she was continuously irritable that day. And we thought that this was because she had some, perhaps abdominal discomfort, and she had a little abdominal distension as well. And we continued the ceftriaxone, but there was just no relief in the fever. And the fever was continuously 103, 104. And by the next day, the child's irritability had not reduced one bit. And she looked better in hydration, but irritability, loose motions, none of this was better. And her edema had increased. And by next day, the abdominal distension had also increased. And urine output was okay because she was well hydrated. And the next day, on the first day, the examination was not done of the throat. But on the second day, I found that this child had, that irritability was because the child could not breathe. And there was so much of mouth breathing and throat sounds, even on chest auscultation, that I opened the mouth to see. And to my surprise, there was very severe tonsillitis. The whole throat and the tonsils were coated with a membrane. And I was wondering whether this was something like diphtheria because of the amount, but there was no bull neck and there was no other signs of diphtheria, and the toxicity was not the kind of the toxicity of diphtherial toxin. And then I thought of the other possibility, whether this was something like adenoviral infection, because we have seen adenoviral infections like that with severe mouth breathing and nasal congestion and gastroenteritis. But with adenovirus, I had never seen a membrane like that. So that was something that was very, very odd. And the third thing I thought was whether this could be Epstein-Barr virus, but the age was a little unlikely because this was a 15-month-old child, and Epstein-Barr I would have thought of a little older or even an adolescent child. So the possibility, and with that kind of edema that had come up, I thought whether Kawasaki is possible. So my possibilities were, of course, first was whether this was Epstein-Barr, whether this was diphtheria, whether this was, and then the last thing that struck me, another thing this child had come with was a rash on the body. There was the whole child was, I'm sorry, I don't have a clinical picture also, because at that time we didn't think this was something which is very different. And we thought it was in the early stages of May. So we thought that this was something like a prickly heat, and that was what was causing. And after I saw the membrane, everything clicked in my mind that this membrane and this kind of thing, whether this is scarlet fever. And we had already added ceftriaxone. I said we'll not stop that because the child was looking so uncomfortable. But the only thing that didn't fit in with everything was the loose motions and vomiting, because I had never seen either scarlet fever or tonsillitis with loose motions and vomiting. We have seen throat and we have seen a poor nasal breathing, but never have seen loose motions and vomiting, even in scarlet fever. So
Conjunctiva and tongue.
yes, the conjunctiva was mildly congested, but not the kind we see in adenovirus, not that really red congested eyes, but there was mild redness, which was, you're right, which was what made me suspect Kawasaki. The conjunctiva was a little red, and also there was some lymph nodes, which was obvious because of the, and that 104 fever in an infant was what made me suspect Kawasaki's disease. So we changed. So the first day for 24 hours, we had already given ceftriaxone. Now I thought whether co-amoxiclav should be added because this was a a respiratory infection with so much of nose congestion. So we added co-amoxiclav in 100 mg per kg of amoxicillin, and we continued that for 24 hours. And there was so much nasal block that I thought whether we need to give steroid nasal drops to open that. And we gave steroid nasal drops, and she wouldn't accept anything. So there was a lot of throat pain, and we applied analgesic mouthwash, but none of this helped. The fever continued. It was 103, 104. And when we looked up the books, that scarlet fever, there was nothing that said that all this could be there. And so on the third day, after 48 hours of treating this child, first for 24 hours with ceftriaxone, and in the second 24 hours with amoxicillin, co-amoxiclav, on the third day, we sought Dr. Tanu Singhal's opinion. And we did a video conferencing with her, and we showed her the child. So with the presence of high-grade fever, the rash, the throat infection, yeah, I forgot to tell you that on the second day, this child also had severe abdominal distension, and we did an ultrasonography which showed mild ascites and also showed a hepatomegaly. We did an X-ray chest which showed a right-sided patch on the X-ray. And so this child had high fever, had a rash, had severe tonsillar membranous rash, had nose block, had a patch, had a hepatomegaly, had edema, had congestion of the eyes, and had ascites as well. So we thought what could be, and then after this was presented to Dr. Tanu Singhal, she said that this is invasive streptococcal infection. And I had never heard of this invasive streptococcal. We have seen so many streptococcal tonsillitis, but I have never seen invasive streptococcal disease in 37 years of my practice. And so this was something new to me, and I thought that we should present this. And what do you think she added? She said you continue with ceftriaxone and add clindamycin. So that is when we added clindamycin to this child. And the dose of clindamycin is 10 milligrams per kg, and in 2 divided doses, and that's what we gave. And lo and behold, this child started improving, not immediately, but the toxicity came down, and the fever started reducing. Slowly, the edema started going. And what she recommended was you give clindamycin. Now, clindamycin can be given either as intravenous injections or as capsules. Now, the capsules are available. The injection is available as 300 ml. It's not expensive at all. So it's not like meropenem and not like other antibiotics that are so expensive. And this was quite reasonably priced, and we could give it IV 3 times a day, and the child did well. And we could not make it oral. And when we asked Dr. Tanu Singhal again, So she suggested that you have to give it for 5 days and then, or 7 days, and then just continue with co-amoxiclav for 14 days. So that is what we did. We continued, not she continued co-amoxiclav. In fact, she said you can even make it amoxicillin. So we continued amoxicillin. However, when the child was discharged, the child took 7 days to recover. First 2 days of IV zone and co-amoxiclav, and then the next 5 days of IV clindamycin. And it was only after 5 days that the child did well. And we could send this child home on co-amoxiclav for 14 days, and the child did well thereafter. So this was a case of, I know Dr. Hemant Joshi will say, why not give penicillin? I could not get penicillin. And also penicillin, the problem, and Dr. Hemant. So penicillin IV is not available. Second, it causes a lot of thrombophlebitis, and therefore it's difficult to continue in a small child. And third, giving intramuscular seemed out of question because there was not this 15 months old child had a lot of edema, and therefore we could not give it IM either, procaine penicillin. So this was a case of invasive streptococcal infection, and this child responded to clindamycin. Now, streptococcal infections are of many kinds. The commonest we see are streptococcal pharyngitis, streptococcal tonsillitis, and only 2 days ago, Anuradha had put up about streptococcal impetigo. And also there is streptococcal pneumonia this child had. And also there is scarlet fever, where you have a palpable maculopapular rash. And this can also be, diagnosed clinically with a strawberry tongue. Yeah, I think I forgot to mention this child also had strawberry tongue. And the last is invasive streptococcal infection, like we saw in this child. The commonest complications we have encountered when we were students is, of course, rheumatic fever and post-streptococcal glomerular nephritis. And also there can be streptococcal chorea, post-rheumatic chorea. So that is one of the other complications that can be there of streptococcal infections. Now, after this, I have seen several cases. There was one more child who came. Yeah, Archana, you want to ask something? You have unmuted.
I said, was this baby breastfed? Because a 15 months old child
She was
getting
breastfed.
so
Yes.
severe invasive streptococcal infection.
Yes, she was breastfed, and we asked Tanu whether we have to work up for immunodeficiency. She said that you just wait. If she gets another infection like that, then you can investigate, because she was all right until then. She had never had a severe infection in the past. So she didn't have. Yeah, Dr. Hemant.
So what was the reason the child has got invasive streptococcal infection rather than, is the host defense, or it was the virulent organism?
So this child was from a poor socioeconomic status, and she was not from a very good. So she had anemia. So maybe she had other micronutrient deficiencies as well. And this is perhaps just the invasive streptococcus. And I think both. So some amount of reduced immunity in a child and the invasive illness. Dr. Hemant.
Anjali, thank you very much. What a presentation. Number one. Number two, you gave us benzyl penicillin maybe 5, 7, 8 years ago. Since then, it is the only drug we use. It is queen of antibiotics. It works in 4 hours. Earlier, it costed only 5 rupees for 10 lakh rupees, 10 lakh unit vial. Now it costs 75 rupees, but it is available. You should have just made a phone call. I would have reached it by myself. I would have physically
which one you have? Crystalline penicillin or
benzyl penicillin? Crystalline.
Crystalline benzyl penicillin.
We added to 100 ml. We have those IV sets where you can put the drug in the
100 ml.
100 yeah, or 100 ml, we put in drug chamber or 100 ml and dilute and give. So all drugs cause thrombophlebitis. There is a rule that if you have to give IV medicine, you have to dilute gentamicin to 2 milligram per ml and ampicillin and etc. Cipro and all to cephalosporins to 50 milligram per ml. But we don't, none of us knows it. So it's better to dilute all medicines and give. And I would request all of you to try have guts when patient is not serious. Switch on to benzyl penicillin. It works in 4 hours.
Yeah,
I've
so
done. Thank you.
yeah. Thank you, Dr. Hemant Joshi. Now, this child was too sick,
Nine,
and
nine.
since we
No.
contacted,
I'm impressed that you did it.
and also since we contacted infectious disease expert, and she recommended clindamycin, we used
No,
clindamycin.
that all is
So,
perfect. I was just sharing the information.
yes, Dr. Hemant. I really appreciate your insistence on using crystalline penicillin, and we have used it also in the past.
You only caused it.
Yeah. So the second thing about clindamycin is that I read up, and scarlet fever, the response to crystalline penicillin is good. But invasive, so the other thing about invasive streptococcal infection is that this streptococci is more, is because it undergoes mutation. So streptococci have several defense mechanisms to cause resistance to antibiotics, and there are specific sites for each of these antibiotics which cause resistance, and they respond. So they have lactamase also, and that is why we have lactam as a defense mechanism, and therefore we use beta lactamase. But streptococci also produce an exotoxin. They produce exotoxin, which then causes this toxicity of abdominal pain and loose motions and vomiting, and the severity that is there, because as they enter the absorption is through the respiratory tract, the entry is through the respiratory tract, and when they enter the bloodstream through that respiratory tract, it is at that time they undergo mutation, and then in those mutant streptococci, they cause the resistance to beta lactam also, and then they produce the exotoxin. So the beta lactamase antibiotics will act on the this, but it cannot produce the production of exotoxins, which is why clindamycin, even in a child who responds to clindamycin, is to only reduce the toxicity. So that is why we could give it for 5 days and then continue. After the exotoxins were reduced, we could continue with oral co-amoxicillin. Now I want to present another child. So I thought that perhaps this was a one-off infection. And then soon we had another child. This child was 7-year-old, one of twins. And this child had, who is being pinned here?
You have done the throat swab culture also to
No,
prove.
we didn't.
Okay.
Yeah, I wish we had done, but this child was already on many other things, and it didn't just strike us. We just wanted some relief for this child because this child was so bad. So,
Madam, 2D echo
I didn't do. For
and respiratory. So respiratory biofire was sent.
No, respiratory biofire, by the way, the throat has only viral and has bordetella. It has no streptococcus pyogenes. This germ is streptococcus pyogenes.
No, it's before doing sending to madam. Did you send biofire because so much nose congestion and she had respiratory
So what
complaints.
were you suspecting?
No, Miss, looks like adenovirus only, or
No,
could
this
be
child had
Kawasaki.
Correct. Yeah. But what about the throat, that patch on the throat?
That also, I think we can see in the severe adenovirus infections.
No. You can see it in Epstein-Barr virus, but not in adenovirus. Adenovirus has a predilection only for the adenoids, not tonsils. You may get mild pharyngeal congestion, but you won't get a patch. So in Epstein-Barr virus, you will get a patch in throat. I have seen an Epstein-Barr. I have presented that case also. That child developed a rash after giving amoxicillin, and that child was Epstein-Barr virus. But there was no, that child had not much of nasal congestion, but a patch on throat. And this child had a severe patch on throat, like you see follicular tonsillitis, only more invasive illness causing a hepatomegaly, ascites, pneumonic patch. I have the X-ray also, but I didn't have the time to make the PPT. But I will put that up on the
group.
Yeah.
Yes,
So and the respiratory biofire that we do doesn't cover Streptococcus pyogenes.
That doesn't cover.
Yeah. It covers all the viruses, including COVID virus, but it does not, and it includes Bordetella and Mycoplasma amongst the bacteria, but does not include Streptococcus pyogenes.
Streptococcus.
Yeah. So that was
Yes.
that was the reason I didn't think of doing the biofire.
Ideally, we should do the throat swab
Culture.
culture.
Yeah.
Culture.
We thought of doing a throat. We did a throat swab and we sent it to the local but I'm sorry. We did do the throat swab. We got this child had also taken antibiotics outside. So most children take antibiotic and come to us. So we got streptococcus group. We got gram positive cocci in pairs, but nothing was grown on culture. Yeah, so I had to go a lot clinically, and Dr. Tanu Singhal confirmed that this was, because this was the first time I was seeing invasive illness. Yeah, we did do a throat culture and we did do a throat swab, which showed that.
Yes.
And then after this, we got a second child, and this child was 7 years old, for one of twins, who came with again high fever, 104, 105. This child was, having nose breathing and obstructive sleep apnea, and was being treated by an ENT surgeon for this, and was advised adenotonsillectomy sometime whenever, and they kept postponing it, and for last 5 years they said nahi hum log abhi nahi, baad mein nahi. And this child came, someone's video, and this child came with a history of fever for last 1 week, and also now that he came, he had severe nose block, mouth breathing, high fever, no cough, and had mild abdominal pain. And when he came to us, he had this throat patch in throat. He had no rash, and he had nose block and mouth breathing, and he had abdominal pain. Now that was something unusual, and was looking very sick. So after having seen that child with this kind of infection, I was a little, more alert as to whether we are seeing again invasive streptococcal infection. And this child was admitted. We started on co-amoxiclav, did not respond, continued to have high fever, 103, 104. And next day after co-amoxiclav, he started developing loose motions and vomiting. And the doctor, that patient said that aapne ye dawa chalu kiya, and that's how he has developed this. So, but we knew that this could have been, invasive streptococcal infection, because the fever was so high, and this child was not doing well, had that throat infection, had nasal block, and had abdominal symptoms of vomiting and loose motions, which our first child also had. So it's, I thought that it was again good to contact Dr. Tanu Singhal, but she was abroad, and we had to I contacted another great infectious disease specialist, Dr. Suhas Prabhu. Again, we did a video consult because I didn't want to take a chance. This child was running fever for a long time. So yeah, I had given co-amoxiclav not for 24 hours, but for 48 hours. And we consulted Dr. Suhas Prabhu. And Dr. Suhas Prabhu said we had already given 1 dose of clindamycin at night. because we had the good experience of the previous child. And then next morning, we had a video talk with Dr. Suhas Prabhu, and he said, yes, that it's good to continue with clindamycin. And then I asked him, I said, what is the thing about clindamycin? And he said that clindamycin stops the exotoxin. And that is why the toxicity will come down, although co-amoxiclav will act, but the toxicity will come down with clindamycin. And that's when he suggested, again, in this child, give 5 to 7 days of clindamycin, but continue co-amoxiclav for 14 days. And he also said, I said, is just amoxicillin enough? So he said, amoxicillin, if we are very certain that this is streptococcus, we should give only amoxicillin. But if you're giving, if it could be something like a staphylococcal infection, then co-amoxiclav is needed. When I previously said that we could also do, the kind of infections that Streptococcus pyogenes causes is pharyngitis, tonsillitis, scarlet fever. It can cause impetigo, which Anuradha presented that day on the group, and it can cause invasive streptococcal infection. And there is something like a toxic streptococcal shock syndrome. Just like you have toxic shock syndrome for staphylococcus and staphylococcal skin infection, you can also have toxic shock syndrome with streptococcal infections. And our child never had a low BP, but that is one of the possibilities. So in our 7-year-old child, again, we continued clindamycin. I gave IV co-amoxiclav for the 3 days. He too took a long time, and he took 4 days for the fever to come down and toxicity to come down, loose motions to stop, and the general condition to improve in spite of giving clindamycin. But after clindamycin, he started showing definitive improvement. So today I presented these 2 patients of severe invasive streptococcal infection. But I have been seeing a lot of children also with scarlet fever-like syndrome who come with, a strawberry tongue. And so second patient also had strawberry tongue, but he also had loose motions and vomiting, which is unlike seen in other infections. So I have thereafter seen some, Archana.
Anjali, any particular reason why you consulted Dr. Suhas Prabhu instead of Dr. Tanu Singhal this
Tanu
time?
had gone to Greece. Tanu was in
Okay.
Greece.
Okay.
I told her you can consult from there, but she had gone for a holiday. So
Okay.
I had to contact Dr. Suhas Prabhu. And Suhas Prabhu was not even going to charge me for that, but I said, no, that's not good. I'm not paying, the patient is paying. So he said, isme kya hai? So I think they see it quite often. I wanted to invite Dr. either Tanu or Dr. Suhas Prabhu, but since we already had 2 great speakers, external speakers, I decided to just present this, and perhaps some other time we can call. So yeah. So if you, I just, Hemant.
अंजलि जैसा कोई नहीं
Hemant, you are known to exaggerate, but just wanted to present these 2 cases. So if you see, Anuradha.
In streptococcal infection, they typically have erythematous,
Yes.
perioral erythematous.
Yes.
Typically, and rash, good,
Yes.
and congestion of eyes and
Yes.
strawberry tongue. Typically,
I saw another 2-year-old girl just 2 days ago, and she presented with fever. And on the day of fever only, she came to me, and she had, poor appetite and irritability. And I thought this could be just a viral infection. But the only thing that was there on the first day was, redness of her lips. But I said just redness of lips and fever and irritability, loose motions. So multi-system, could this be just a viral infection? So I observed her, but today I had to start her on amoxicillin. So now this time I was a little bold, And I said that I'll start only amoxicillin and not co-amoxicillin because this looks very much like streptococcal. So when she came yesterday, she had, strawberry tongue, just the beginning of strawberry tongue. And she had erythematous lips and throat. And she had loose motions. She had vomiting, poor appetite, and high fever. And I started her on amoxicillin. Today, the fever has come down. So I've not seen her again. So I will tell you the response to the strawberry tongue. So the second patient had so severe erythema and strawberry tongue that although his fever came down, that father wanted to know if the fever has come down, why you're not discharging the patient. I can come for IV clindamycin. I told him that strawberry tongue and the red tongue has not disappeared. So the toxicity has not gone down. So after giving, the fourth day of clindamycin, that went, and then we could discharge that child. And he continued IV clindamycin. So
what is how the line of action is there in clindamycin? Have you read about that? And what are the
I
side
told you. So it blocks the exotoxin. It blocks the exotoxin release, and that's how it acts.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
but I
are
can
there
give you
any
side
effects
of clindamycin.
of clindamycin?
I
So
didn't
we
see.
have not used it more often, and nowadays it's coming up in the resistant cases only. So its action is there in malaria as well as in many other rare conditions where clindamycin is coming up as a second line of treatment. So is there any different thing, or are there any
I
side
don't know. I've not read of it, but this will be a good point of discussion,
हाँ,
and
किसी
I
ने
will read
ज्वाइन
up
नहीं
and
किया
through.
क्या अभी तक?
सरांना सांगायचंय हेमंत जोशी सरांना
Yeah, when you see a child with lipsticks and a red ice cream eaten red tongue, give penicillin. I'll put the injection penicillin address on our group, but when the child is not serious, have the guts to use Pentids. It's 1 rupee tablet, 400
Yeah.
milligram penicillin tablet, and it does miracles. Cost so cheap. The whole strip is just 10 rupees,
Yes.
and it works so great.
I know of
No,
one
no,
more
no.
child. Yeah.
Karen, my time done. Please.
No, I know of another child whom I saw the prescription of Dr. Suhas Prabhu, and he had given Pentid 200. So he does prescribe. So but I wish that next time we call Dr. Suhas Prabhu or Dr. Tanu Singhal and request them to talk about penicillin in this infection, and also about invasive streptococcal, because they must have seen a lot of streptococcal infections, because they said clindamycin, so they must be using. So I just want to know their experience. Yeah, Hemant.
So for 1 month till we meet next time, all of you, when the child is not dying, you can wait for a day or two. Have guts, try that Pentids 200. It is bitter, so you have to tell them to crush and put on honey, or eat honey and then give.
Yeah, so
But
the
it
problem
works
is
so well.
that it's
I
available
agree.
only as a tablet, not as a syrup, and then they have to crush it, and it's the
I know,
acceptance
I
is not.
understand all that. So, but at least little big babies are just as you try new dress, now you try this.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
it's
we
not
should.
trying in a slightly older 7-8-year-old child with early onset of tonsillitis. Pentid 400 might be worth trying, because we do use Pentid in Dahanu. We give all children prophylaxis up to 5 years of age with Pentid. I carry Pentid 200 and 400 with me, and nobody complains कि नहीं ले सकते हैं. So
You just ask them what is the trick they do.
So very sad for them. Hydroxyurea and everything has to be. It's bitter. They have a capsule. They remove it. They add it to I don't know what. They give it in
But
water.
no,
They
it
add
it
honey.
will be a great learning lesson. Just ask them what
Yes,
happened.
I'll ask them.
Teach us.
Yes.
Thank you
So
all.
we can have a multicentric thing, like 2 patients, everyone will give Pentids and see the results and present them next CME.
Good. Yeah, good president. Good.
Good.
President will make a good presidents. Good.
Precedence.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Now I request Dr. Hemant Joshi sir to tell us about the Palghar
Epidemiology.
epidemiology.
We have
And
Dr.
that's
Uday
it.
Bodhankar with us.
Hello, Dr. Uday Bodhankar. Acha.
Uday, please.
Sir, welcome.
Dr. Uday.
Welcome, Dr. Bodhankar. Ex-president, Central IIP.
And he is
मॅडम
the,
आहेत पण म्यूट वर आहेत.
yes, he is
Dr.
the,
Bodhankar, please unmute yourself and talk.
he's the mentor for the Comhead,
Yes.
yeah,
I
the
saw him.
Commonwealth Health Association and for Disabilities. And he has received a felicitation from Queen Elizabeth. And thank you, Comhead, for giving us this opportunity to work along with you. Now I request Dr. Anuradha Palwankar and Dr. Archana Joshi Madam and Dr. Hemant Joshi Madam, sir, to give insight about the Palghar epidemic.
Uday, Uday, unmute. Uday.
We can't hear him. I think आवाज break होतोय.
सरांना कॉल करून बघ.
Yes. Okay. Hello.
Hello. Hello, sir.
Sorry.
Uday, good.
Sorry.
Thank you for
Sorry.
joining our meeting. Thank you. Thank you
Hello.
for joining.
Thank
Hello.
you for joining and
Sorry,
thank
sorry.
you, Comhead, for
No, no.
giving us the
Yeah, it's an
opportunity.
honor always to listen to you all.
So you were listening?
Always honor to listen to you, Archana, Hemant, Jayasri and Bogan.
We had Usha
Thank you.
Dave
Sorry.
with us. We had Usha with us today.
Anyway, welcome you all. Dave Madam is there. Madam la salute to her for her expertise in genetic at national, international level. Dave Madam is there.
Dame Madam just left, sir.
Just left. She was there.
Oh,
And she had a
oh God,
wonderful
sorry.
talk.
I joined late.
She
I
has
know.
given
Sorry,
a
I joined late.
wonderful talk.
Chalo. I just listened to last of Gokarna Madam, and I think now who is going to talk? Hemant?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Chalo, over to Hemant. No.
No,
Salute, boss.
now the session is epidemiology means what we saw in last 1 or 2 months. So we would like to know from you what is happening in Nagpur. While you think about it, Archana will tell you what is happening at our place.
Archana Joshi Madam. Madam, you are mute and the most supportive, most enthusiastic past president. And we want to learn from you every month about the Palghar epidemiologist, Madam.
Yes.
Uday, we don't have many patients now. The season is little slack. What
Yeah,
we have a lot of hepatitis cases, viral hepatitis.
Okay.
Hepatitis A, IgM positive cases, and few diarrheas, viral diarrheas, and a few cases of allergic airway diseases.
Okay.
OPDs, we have cases of high fever. Mostly they are some heat stroke, heat cramps. These patients with some dehydration, fever not coming down, CRP negative. That's all. In newborns, we are getting cases of jaundice.
Jaundice.
Yeah, more cases of jaundice. The child I have now was bilirubin was 27, and he's now coming down with triple surface phototherapy and IV fluids and breastfeeding. DCT negative, but mother is O, baby is B. DCT is negative. He's got a cephal hematoma that could be the cause of increased bilirubin. That's all from our side. The season is slack. Thank you.
Yeah. Can I say something?
Yes, Uday.
Yeah. Thank you, Archana, Hemant. They are my bosses, both of them. And also Jayasri and all respected Dave Madam, Gokarna Madam, and all IIP Palghar. In Nagpur, I will take 2 minutes. We are seeing more cases of peritonitis, mumps, unilateral, bilateral, and sometimes it is also involving the lower side. We call it query Ludwig's angina type. So we are getting a lot of cases, Hemant, Archana, daily maybe out. I don't see 100 patients a day. I see around 30 to 50 average. So we are getting 3 to 5 per day. It comes to around 10 to 20% peritonitis. And they are so much severity, Archana, that I don't give it's a viral. We just give symptomatic paracetamol, some solution there. They are applying some sumac solution. Oh, I said, okay, you go ahead. The pain, and then we ask them to do chewing gum type, this thing, some limlet goli, so they can do sucking so that the pain can relieve. But many of the patients landed up with secondary complication when we did not give any antibiotic, with so much swelling here, fever, CRP more than 60, 70, and then finally we have to give some augmentin, amoxiclavir acid for 3 to 5 days. Sometimes we have to give and IV antibiotic. I don't know how we label it, because started with viral unilateral parotitis going to other side, and then coming down to the near joint like Ludwig Sanjana query. So many of cases, only thing what I observed is Archana, Hemant, and those patients who came to us, they were given MR vaccine in their school, in the government. Government is not giving MMR in last 5 7 years. So my recommendation, I think you also can do to the IP. I told Vasant, also I told Basarat, government of India, instead of giving MR vaccine, they must introduce MMR, whatever age they are giving, the 9 to 12, then 1.5 to 2, then 5 years, and then 10 years, 3 times. So instead of only having MR vaccine, what I saw that those patients, 90% of them were given government hospital. Only 10% were given MMR vaccine from the private. Mean moms can't. This is what I observed. Other cases like we are getting at Archana said jaundice. We are getting more cases newborn with jaundice. In fact, I'm surprised. Usually we get when there is no sunlight. Those sunlight therapy may be not holding true. But nowadays we are getting, maybe because of some Nagpur is 40, 45. We are lucky this time it was not going high because of rainy. But many of time what we get exaggerated physiological jaundice. Daily 1 or 2 newborn come to me, not more than that. And I think there we, if it is more than 15, then we ask them to within 3 to 5 days, then we give them solar therapy, continuing, though it is controversial, phototherapy in our hospital or at home. So I think as other patient Archana said, diarrhea we are getting it those who eat outside food. Otherwise we don't get. We are getting typhoid cases. We are getting hepatitis A cases. But most prominent was mumps, which was on the top, followed by infectious disease patient. So this is, we are not getting any other bronchitis patient, pneumonia patient at present at least. This is my take home message. Over to you. Yes, Hemant.
Thank you, Uday. Thank you, Uday. We too
Thank
saw
you.
a lot of parotitis cases, but
Yeah.
this month we are not
Yeah.
seeing any.
And
And
1 month
my
back, we were getting all these mumps
Yeah.
cases.
Yeah.
And
it
we
was
have
even
given a letter to the local commissioner also to
yeah.
include this mumps vaccine. But
Yeah.
they have acted, nobody has acted.
Why? Health is a state subject. You don't have to wait for the instruction from the India's Minister of Health. They can independently think and give the thing. But they have got right to do that at even local level, at state level. We'll see. Or delegation. I wanted to talk to the secretary. I think I will be able to do because of the election. Everybody was busy. Maybe by June 15, we should be able to streamline the thing. In Maharashtra, I can't say about India, but Maharashtra will be
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yes,
it will
yes.
be great. Yeah.
My colleague, Dr. Shailesh Barot, suggested that there's a test how you can differentiate between submandibular lymphadenitis and mumps. So he said you do serum amylase. If
Serum amylase.
it is
Okay.
high, it is mumps. If it is normal, then it is submandibular lymphadenitis.
Okay. Okay. Acha.
So
I never
I
knew.
follow Shailesh and I do that. And
Acha. Serum.
if CRP is negative, it is mumps. And amylase negative, it is mumps. If amylase positive,
And CRP positive. More than.
then you have to give antibiotics.
Acha. Very good. Good. Thank you, Archana.
This is suggested by my colleague, Dr. Shailesh Barot.
Who is he? Pediatrician?
He's the secretary of
He's
our branch,
our vice
Okay. Okay.
president.
Sorry.
This
Sorry.
our
Sorry.
vice
Yes.
president.
Yeah, he's our
He-
vice president.
I cannot see him online, but he's
Yeah.
usually there. Yeah.
Vaibhav is
Uh,
there. Mm.
But it must be having some reference, evidence based something which is talking definitely. But I never came across this. But if you are finding it, I think I will do it at the evidence-based study in our case. Now that
No,
we are
serum amylase is produced by the salivary glands,
I
and
know,
therefore,
yeah.
if it is inflamed, serum
Mm.
amylase. We also
Yeah.
do it.
Dr. Hemant Joshi wants to say
Yeah,
something.
please.
Three things. One, squeeze a lemon in the mouth. If it pains, it is mumps.
Mum.
Because it
Well,
makes the salivary gland work
yeah.
and pain. Number
Chewing
one.
gum, that's
Number
right,
two,
yeah.
ask Vasant Khadatkar to see that on Doctor's Day this year, 1 July, there is enough time.
Yes.
Every pediatrician sends email to one email address of Prime Minister. His
Yes,
machine should crash 40,000 emails.
Yes.
Give MMR in place of MR. Cost increases by 1 rupee, but 3
Hardly.
illnesses are covered.
Hemant, please share the Prime Minister's email
Email.
ID.
Yeah, I will do that. After
Bodhankar
that,
sir
आपण
will
40
give
तर
us.
पाठवेन.
I can give.
Hemant, put
sirankade
it in the
असणार.
chat.
I'll do that. I'll do that right away. Number one. Number two, we diagnose jaundice by seeing yellow eyes. But we diagnose summer when we start seeing newborns with jaundice.
Yes, why? How?
So I have studied all our jaundice comes only from in hot days, in October and in June or May, whatever.
May, April, May, yes.
And all of them, all our jaundices are there are non-A, non-B, non-RH. They are just dehydration jaundices.
Dehydration fever,
So
yes.
if our women just don't wrap up babies in summer, if they keep them nangu, they'll not get jaundice. If they feed them well, they'll not get jaundice.
Well said.
Our gynecologists put ACs in all rooms and our jaundice admissions disappeared. So AC was the treatment, yes. So that's it.
Well said.
Then the true problem is that people do not know that they should drink so much water that there is no thirst. In Bombay, there is multi-drug resistant fungal infection, and because of summer, it grows a lot in summer. It's there all the 12 months because Bombay has summer all the 12 months. I'm done. Anybody else wants to tell his past 1 month's experience? If not, then we have done.
Thank you, Dr. Bodhankar sir, for your kind presence and insight about the Nagpur epidemiology. And we have learned a lot from that. And definitely, you will be able. We all will be able to take actions for the vaccination of mumps, which is actually lacking.
In Maharashtra, it will be easy to done after the election because our deputy CM and he's from Nagpur and proactive, so we'll be able to get it done. And we have got our man on MMC, Vinky. So we have got all things to do in Maharashtra. I cannot guarantee, but what Hemant has said, I think that will work. So all email from every branch secretary patient individual also.
No, 40,000 emails. Every IIP member.
Hemant,
10%.
email बोला ना.
Sir, email share करा सगळ्यांना.
लिहून पाठवतो ना. Just write Narendra Modi, write to Narendra Modi on your Google and you get the email.
Okay.
But I will tell you as well.
Yeah, please send. आणि आता पण टाइप केला तर सगळ्यांना मिळेल. You are not in our
आणि
WhatsApp
मला वाटतं हेमंत आपला ड्राफ्ट विल बी सेम to Dr. Narendra Modi ji, Honorable Prime Minister, Government of India, subject inclusion of mumps into MR vaccine as a MMR. That's all. He won't be able to read all the, and then Honorable Sir, whatever 2-3 things, 4-5 lines and sign by that draft. We have to prepare. Hemant, you will.
One line is enough. Give MMR in place of MR.
Yes.
Pediatricians say this. 50,000 pediatricians tell he'll stand up and do it overnight.
Okay, done.
Had we done this before the election, it would have happened. But if
better
do it on
better late than never.
Better late than never.
Let's take, people listen to you. Just tell Vasant and the current president before you sleep tonight, Basavaraj. Tell him now.
आजच करतो मी, don't worry.
आताच कर, and this will make history if you introduce MMR. And I'll tell you information. Bombay Corporation is giving MMR on advice of local doctors. And all the union territories give. Delhi gives, Chandigarh gives, Pondicherry gives, Goa gives, Sikkim gives.
Are you sure?
MMR and typhoid, they all.
I never knew. Do you have some evidence about Bombay Municipal
JJ
Corporation.
Hospital,
Yes, yes.
JJ
You don't need it.
Hospital
Yeah.
gets MMR. JJ
Yeah.
Hospital is giving MMR because they say the state is giving, and the municipality is giving us. So
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Mumbai
yes.
municipality is giving.
The Bombay Municipality is, I think, very proactive. I think the Gagrani has come na some instead of Chahalच्या जागी कमिशनर कोणी गगराणी आलाय.
तुम्हालाच माहित सर.
हो. नाही नाही ठीक आहे. We'll get that. We'll
But at
do
least
it.
tell Basavaraj, talk to him, pick up your phone and tell him.
आज मी फोन करतो SMS करतो आणि तुम्हाला कॉपी पाठवतो.
No, that will make
ठीक आहे?
history. कारण आपण
चालेल.
करूया ना.
नक्की नक्की. ठीक आहे, डन. थँक्यू.
Okay.
थँक्यू.
आजची
ऑनर टू बी
People
हिअर.
will remember.
Thank you.
People will
आजची
remember you from
आपली
91 to
CME या
2025.
येस, या ऍक्शनमुळे या आपली सीएमई आता पूर्णत्वाकडे येते आणि या सीएमईचा उपयोग महाराष्ट्रातल्या सगळ्या मुलांना होणार आहे. सो दॅट इज अ
वैभवी,
गुड
शैलेश
पार्ट.
आहे का? शैलेश?
वैभवी
नाही मॅडम, आता नाही.
अमर.
शैलेशने ती टेस्ट सांगितली ना मायलेज करायला, म्हणून मी ते
हो
बोधनकर
मॅडम.
सरांना सांगितली.
हो मी ऐकतीये.
So now I request Dr. Anuradha Palwankar to give a vote of thanks, our secretary, and who has made this CME 1 MMC credit point. We got this
Excellent
because
work,
of Dr.
Anuradha.
Anuradha, and she is doing it persistently.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anuradha.
And with lot of effort, she sends her own person to get
Yes.
the observer signature to the MMC office, and often it was with her own expense.
Yeah,
Thank
there
you,
is a story.
Anuradha.
There is a story.
Yes,
की
sir.
पण अनुराधाने आपला हट्ट सोडला नाही. तिने तिचा माणूस पाठवला आणि सही आणली आणि MMC पॉइंट मिळवून घेतले.
Oh, she has worked very hard, and she's doing it consistently for the last 2 years.
I would also like to acknowledge the presence of Dr. Vishal Wadekar. He would do it for us when we had physical meetings
Yes.
in my hospital.
Yes,
Thank you,
Vishal.
Vishal.
Thank you so much. Vishal
Thank
would,
you.
that time
Thank
it
you, ma'am.
was,
Thank you.
yeah, that time he used to do it in person.
He would
He
always
used to
do it for
be-
our
yeah.
branch. Vishal would do it.
And
Yes.
we miss those fruits and lunches. So let's meet this sometime. अंजलीच्या कडे आपण इडली खायला जाऊया.
चला ना. आपण नेक्स्ट CME आपल्याकडे माझ्याकडे ठेवू
Yeah, with idlis and live.
लाईव्ह.
So, thank you, Dr. Lalit Verma sir for his celiac disease presentation. Dr. Usha Dave madam for giving us insight about the genetics, and thank you so much, Dr. Kokana madam, for such a beautiful case presentation and telling us about the clindamycin, which is new for us. And thank you, Dr. Bodhankar sir, for attending our CME. Thank you all the seniors, Dr. Joshi sir, Joshi madam, Dr. Deshpande madam, and thank you all
Vaibhavi.
Dr. Vaibhavi madam, and all the
All the
attendees of today's CME.
attendees.
And thank you, Dr. Tupkar sir, who is observer today.
Thank you,
thank
you,
Pallavi
observing.
madam. Pallavi
For
madamला special thanks.
Thanks
And
to Pallavi.
Pallavi.
And thanks to Jayashree for moderating this session.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Jayashree.
madam. Thank
Yes,
you,
thank you. Our next monthly CME will be on 26th of June.
Okay.
हेमंत
Okay.
काहीतरी बोलायचे.
Yes,
मला, yeah, just as we talk of monthly epidemiology, na, I think we all are in practice for last 2, 3, 4 decades. We all should be able to say that this is something good that I have learned over 30, 20, 40 years. So प्रत्येकाने काय काय दरवेळा सांगितलं ना, तर that will be really useful. So let's दरवेळा नवीन काहीतरी आठवलं, सगळं नाही आठवलं तरी काहीतरी सांगितलं जाईल. करूया.
Our next CME is on the 5th of June at Hotel 3 Seasons. And 31st, we have an online, 31st of May, online CME on AI in this by Dr. In medical practice by Dr. Satish Devpujari at 9 p.m. on Zoom, and Jayashree will be sharing that link. So we meet again on 31st, 9 p.m. and on 5th in person at 3 Seasons. So everyone who is here, please do attend these, and I'm sure the talk on AI is very, very informative, and the talk on neurodevelopmental disorders by the team of New Horizons and Dr. Samir Dalwai at Three Seasons. Everyone is kindly invited. Please do inform us if you're coming. So it'll be lovely interacting with everyone and meeting everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, 5th June, it is 2 p.m. and before that, lunch is there. And since 5th June is an environmental day, we will be celebrating and planting trees on that day also.
Super.
5th June, yeah.
We have put Narendra Modi's email ID on the chat box.
Yeah, we got it. We got it, Archana.
Yeah,
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Want to say
That
We
is
saw
so
it.
nice.
I have taken a photograph and it's Narendra Modi at कुठे गेलं ते? One new message.
34@gmail.com.
Narendra Modi 1234 at gmail.com. Nice. I think it should just be Narendra Modi 1 because he's number 1.
Yeah. And he should come back again on 4th June.
Yes.
So we can celebrate on 5th.
Yes.
Upkeep.
400
Jai
par.
Shri Ram.
By sending an email.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
And a
you.
lovely meeting.